Most people think buying a private jet is the moment you've officially made it. After all, what's more expensive than owning your own aircraft? Well, quite a few cars, actually. And that's the crazy part. Some of today's most exclusive luxury cars cost more than private jets that can carry you across the country. So why would anyone spend that kind of money on something that sits in a garage most of the year? The answer has very little to do with transportation. These aren't cars built to save time or make life easier. They're rolling masterpieces, status symbols, and in some cases, investments worth millions. Once you see what's hiding behind these price tags, you'll understand why the world's wealthiest collectors keep choosing these cars over an airplane. Rolls-Royce Noire Droptail. Let's start with something that barely feels like a car at all. Imagine walking into a luxury boutique where almost everything is made specifically for you. The materials, the colors, even the smallest details are chosen around your personal taste. Now imagine applying that same idea to a Rolls-Royce. That's exactly what happened with the Noire Droptail. This isn't a model you'll see parked outside five-star hotels every weekend. Only a tiny handful were ever created, and each one took years of craftsmanship to complete. The inspiration came from the black Baccarat rose, and you can actually see that influence throughout the car. The woodwork alone required an unbelievable amount of hand finishing, with thousands of tiny veneer pieces carefully assembled to create a pattern that looks more like fine furniture than automotive trim. Here's the funny part: when you're spending this kind of money, horsepower almost becomes a side note. Owners aren't talking about acceleration. They're talking about craftsmanship. They're talking about how many hours went into shaping a single interior panel. That's the level where luxury stops being about performance and starts becoming art. Rolls-Royce Boattail. If the Noire feels like a moving sculpture, the Boattail feels like a private yacht that somehow ended up on four wheels. The first thing everyone notices isn't the front grille, it's the rear. With the press of a button, the back of the car opens like a pair of butterfly wings, revealing an elegant hosting suite complete with custom accessories designed specifically for the owner. Who thinks of putting something like that inside a car? Someone who isn't trying to compete with other luxury cars anymore. They're creating an experience. That's what makes the Boattail so fascinating. It ignores almost every rule of modern automotive design. Instead of chasing lap times or top speed records, it focuses on something much rarer, making every journey feel like an event. You could park 10 supercars beside it, and people would still wander over to see what was hidden beneath those opening rear panels. That's the kind of attention money alone can't buy. Bentley Mulliner Batur now. Here's a car that proves exclusivity doesn't always mean building something completely from scratch. At first glance, the Batur still looks unmistakably Bentley. Look a little closer though, and you'll realize almost every detail has been reimagined. This car became incredibly important because it marked the beginning of Bentley's new design direction while celebrating one of its most famous engines. SAP Lokrax immediately understood what that meant. Some chapters only get written once. Knowing that this would be among the final Bentley models powered by the legendary W12 engine made it far more than another grand tour. It became a farewell, and farewell editions have a habit of becoming some of the most desirable cars ever produced. Owners were given the opportunity to personalize almost everything. Special paint finishes, nick materials, even details created exclusively for a single customer. That means it's incredibly unlikely you'll ever find two Baturs configured exactly the same way. For collectors, that's priceless. Cadillac Celestiq. Now let's talk about the biggest surprise on this list. For years, Cadillac wasn't the first name people mentioned when discussing ultra-exclusive luxury cars. Then the Celestiq arrived. And suddenly, everyone started paying attention. This wasn't Cadillac trying to compete with ordinary luxury sedans. It was Cadillac trying to prove it could build one of the most personalized automobiles in the world. Nearly every car is tailored to its owner, with an astonishing level of customization available before production even begins. Instead of rolling thousands off an assembly line, each example is assembled with extraordinary attention to detail. That's a huge difference. When production is intentionally limited, and every customer is involved in the creative process, the car becomes something much more personal than transportation. It becomes a reflection of the person who ordered it. And that's exactly why buyers willing to spend millions don't see these vehicles the same way the rest of us do. To us, they're unbelievably expensive cars. To them, they're one-of-one creations that happen to have four wheels. And as you'll see, the next few cars take that philosophy even further, where rarity, history, and craftsmanship push prices so high that even private jets start looking like the cheaper option. Pininfarina Battista Edizione Nino Farina. Most people hear the name Pininfarina and immediately think about beautiful Italian design. Collectors hear that name and think about history. The Battista was already one of the world's most exclusive electric hypercars. But the Edizione Nino Farina made it even more special. It wasn't created just to celebrate performance. It honored Nino Farina, the first ever Formula One world champion. That instantly gave the car something money can't manufacture: a story. Only a very small number were ever produced, and each one carried unique details inspired by Farina's racing career. For collectors, that's the difference between buying an expensive vehicle and owning a piece of motorsport history. SP Automotive Chaos now. Here's a car that almost sounds too unbelievable to be real. When the Chaos was announced, people couldn't decide whether to be excited or skeptical. The performance claims were outrageous. The design looked like something from a science fiction movie. And the price? It placed the car in a category where buyers could just as easily start shopping for private aircraft. That's exactly why it grabbed so much attention. It wasn't trying to follow the rules established by Ferrari, Lamborghini, or Bugatti. It wanted to create its own. Whether people loved it or questioned it, one thing was impossible to ignore. Everyone was talking about it. Sometimes that's exactly what an ultra-exclusive manufacturer wants. Hispano Suiza Carmen Boulogne. There aren't many brands that can disappear for decades and return with something that shocks the automotive world. Hispano Suiza managed to do exactly that. The Carmen Boulogne doesn't rely on a famous modern badge or decades of marketing. Instead, it brings back one of the oldest luxury automotive names in history and combines it with futuristic electric performance. That combination immediately caught the attention of serious collectors, not because they were looking for another electric car, but because they were witnessing the rebirth of a legendary brand. When something that rare appears after such a long absence, people know it may never happen again. And that's often all collectors need to hear. Aspark Owl. Finally, let's talk about a car that quietly surprised almost everyone. The Aspark Owl didn't come from a manufacturer with a century of racing history. It didn't have generations of famous supercars behind it. Instead, it let its performance do the talking. The moment enthusiasts saw what this all-electric hypercar could do, opinions changed almost overnight. Suddenly, a company that many people had never heard of was competing with the biggest names in the industry. Production remained incredibly limited, making every example feel even more exclusive. For buyers, that uniqueness became part of the appeal. Sometimes owning something nobody else has heard of is far more satisfying than owning something everyone already recognizes. And maybe that's the biggest lesson from this entire list. These cars aren't expensive because they're simply faster than everything else. If that were true, there would always be a cheaper alternative. They're expensive because each one offers something that can't be copied. A level of craftsmanship, a remarkable story, a historic name, or an exclusivity so extreme that even among billionaires, ownership becomes a conversation. That's why comparing them to private jets actually makes sense. At this level, buyers aren't choosing the smarter purchase. They're choosing the one that speaks to them. Because when you've reached a point where you can afford almost anything, the most valuable thing in the world isn't speed. It's owning something almost nobody else ever will. If you enjoyed discovering these extraordinary machines, make sure you subscribe. We're just scratching the surface of the world's rarest and most fascinating automobiles. And the next video will take you even deeper into the hidden world of elite collectors, one-of-one creations, and automotive legends you probably never knew existed.